Ghosts of Tabor and Escape from Tarkov have quite a bit of resemblance. In fact, I'd say it in most areas that Tabor turns Tarkov's mechanics pretty smoothly into VR, but we will get in more detail now. Let's first cover the gameplay mechanics. Tarkov's movement is very similar to every other FPS game, although it has more inertia to it, so it feels like your character weighs a lot. Tabor doesn't have inertia. If you press left, your character goes left. If you press forward, your character goes forward, and it is pretty smooth. Jumping is in both games, but Tabor doesn't use much stamina for running or jumping. You can crouch in both games, but proning doesn't really work in Tabor. Your gear will just block your vision. And while in Tarkov you use your mouse wheel to crouch, or better said, adjust the crouch height, you just crouch IRL in Tabor. Now for the shooting mechanics. Tarkov has shooting, tactical reloading, fast reloading, and fire mode selection. It also has mag checking and also press checking. All of this is done with buttons. All of this is present in Tabor. You can shoot, tactically reload so that you keep your mag, which is really nice to perform because mag palming is in the game. You won't understand how satisfying mag palming is in VR until you try it. Fast reloading can be performed by dropping the mag straight to the ground to do a quicker reload, and the difference is huge. It also has fire mode selection, although for some guns it is hard to tell on what mode it is, and additionally you can put it on safety accidentally. You can perform a mag check by taking out the mag and flicking it, which makes your controller vibrate. As far as I know, 3 vibrations mean that the mag is at least 60% full, while below that the mag is less full, and there's a chart showing the percentages, but it's irrelevant for this video. But it's a cool mechanic. You can also perform press checks, aka chamber checks, by just pulling the slide/bolt and looking inside if there is a bullet there. Realism is amazing in Tabor since they took some specific weapon differences into account. For example, you have to lock the MP5's chamber into place before being able to put mags in, or for example you can't also eject the Makarov's mag with a button because the Makarov doesn't have a mag eject button, so you have to pull out the mag by hand. This makes realism nice, but I can't help but feel annoyed when I have to be careful of not putting the MP5's mag in wrong when in a hectic firefight. So this time I'd really prefer fun over realism, and I only have this problem with the MP5. Tarkov is realistic for the most part, but I think the recoil and attachments are a bit extreme. Speaking of attachments, both games have attachments, but I think Tarkov wins in the customization options category. When talking about immersion, the point goes obviously to Tabor, since even a bad VR gunplay system is incredibly immersive because you actually handle the gun, you do everything manually, like reloading or doing press checks, just cannot be beaten by a flat screen game. And quickly, both games have backpacks, different kinds of backpacks, they have chest rigs. In Tabor you can actually put chest rigs on, and you can put mag pouches anywhere you want, how it feels comfortable for you. So that's also a nice upside. Now let's go over to the graphics and visuals. This is an obvious point, but Tarkov is of course better looking than Tabor because it's a flat screen game, and on top of that Tabor has to be optimized for the mobile chip of the Quest 2, so the point goes to Tarkov. The art style is going to Tarkov as well, since Tarkov has a really iconic look in my opinion with the sharpness to it, while Tabor looks kinda bland, but Tabor definitely isn't a bad looking game, because everything looks better inside the headset. The footage you are seeing here is also the lowest graphic settings because the game isn't that well optimized, so I had to crank everything down. And even then, the performance suffers. Tarkov's optimization was awful, but it did get better over the years, so I definitely say Tarkov is better in that whole aspect. There are some VR specific visual enhancements though, like the guns looking high fidelity because of all the engravings, and generally you will hold guns next to your face a lot in Tabor, so it looks good. Next, I'd like to talk about immersion and how each game utilizes their platform for an immersive experience. Tarkov's make great use of audio. Sometimes the game is really quiet and then suddenly a very loud gunshot kills you. Also, gunshots can be heard from far away, and the way it echoes around is just really well done. I heard Tarkov's audio was bugged back when I played it, but I'm not sure if that problem still persists. The sound of wind when not wearing headphones in the game is also very loud and tinnitus inducing. Like, no joke, people get tinnitus because of this loud sound. Speaking of headphones, there are, as far as I know, none of these in Tabor to enhance audio, although you have helmets, but it's not the same. Tarkov also gives audio cues for people running through bushes or sprinting loudly, which is in Tabor as well. In Tarkov, you have to use the mouse wheel to walk quieter and slower, while you do that with the stick in Tabor, or you can just walk IRL. Tabor has great mechanics for a VR game. Manual reloading, manual ladder climbing, manual opening drawers and boxes, manual grabbing of loot you find, manually opening your backpack and putting said loot in there, having holsters for your weapons, being able to take off your gear by hand, etc. There aren't menus you have to go through, but rather everything is done by hand, and that's exactly how devs should utilize VR. Instead of UIs, there is only one UI element, or rather two. One is to show blood around the screen when you're low HP, and also a compass which you can turn off. When you look at your wrist, you can see if your mic is muted or not. You can see rate time, you can see some information about food, water, and survival generally, health. And you can also see the compass there to show you the extracts, but we'll get to that in a second. Next, let's cover the maps. Both Tarkov and Tabor have hideouts you spawn in. The hideouts can be customized and upgraded, and all of your loot is stored in the hideout. Tabor makes excellent use of VR by making the storage an actual storage you have to physically interact with, while Tarkov uses a storage menu you have to play Tetris in, and I love that. Tabor's storage can be janky and things do fall through the ground sometimes, but it is still a good system. For actual maps, Tabor has 3 and Tarkov has 9 at the moment, with more coming. Tabor has the island of Tabor, which is my favorite map and basically shoreline from Tarkov. Then there is Silo, which is basically the equivalent of factory, and there is Matka Mies, which reminds me the most of Streets of Tarkov. It kind of looks like Amsterdam. The maps in Tabor are generally smaller in scale but feel large because of it being VR and fully scaled like in real life. What I do like is Tabor giving you a way to see the extracts on the map, as well as which ones are active, while in Tarkov you have to look up a map online, buy an in-game map which still doesn't help, or trial and error. And I think this is the most annoying part of Tarkov and the worst game design decision ever. The maps in Tarkov are more detailed, and I'd say both games are well interactive with the map. In Tarkov there are doors everywhere, while in Tabor there are some gates you can open at specific spots. And I also previously said that Tabor has all the VR mechanics in the map too. Next is player progression. Tarkov plays a lot like an RPG, with a lot of stats you have to progress through. Tabor doesn't have those, and I think it's a good thing that it doesn't have those, because Tarkov has so much micromanagement, it's annoying, man. The leveling is similar in both games. You do missions for traders and get XP and money, which you can use to level up traders and buy things from, or sell stuff to them. There's a flea market in Tarkov where players can sell stuff to each other, while Tabor doesn't have that yet. Tabor's quests are simpler than Tarkov's, since they require you to kill enemies or find specific items, while in Tarkov you might find special keys for special rooms, special quest items which you may or may not have to bring somewhere else too, so it's a lot more varied. One thing I forgot about the immersion point in Tabor that I quickly wanted to point out again is, of course, eating and drinking is very realistically done, and it just feels awesome. Maybe at this point I should also say that Tarkov has a secure container in the inventory which you can put items into, and you won't lose those items when you die in raid. Tabor does not have that. Tabor also doesn't have Tarkov's scav raids, which is basically you blending in with the in-game AI to gain loot and extract to then use with your main character. On the other hand, Tarkov doesn't have the rations that Tabor has. Tabor does plan to implement scav raids in the future though. And also in both games you can ensure the gear that you bring with you in raid, in case you die, you have a chance that those get retrieved if nobody extracted with them. Now to the AI quickly. Tarkov has scavs and Tabor also does have them, called Phoenix. There are scav bosses in both games, and honestly the scavs aren't that intelligent in both games. There are scav raiders in Tarkov though, and those are more tactical than normal scavs. The lore and story of both games are very similar. Tabor's story goes like this. In 2042, Slavic militant forces, Folk, staged a coup and gained control of the Russian capital. Soon, Folk declared war on all of Europe and the West, believing Russian citizens were being subjected to experimentation. All countries and governments denied any knowledge of this information. Special forces, being hired by NATO, were deployed to gather intel on the Folk and rumored experiments. In their offensive, Folk forces laid siege to the NATO stronghold of Tabor. Tarkov's is really similar and goes like this. It's 2028 and the Norvings region became a gateway for Russia and Europe, with economical importance, and the Terror Group are a notorious company that found their way in the region. This company was suspicious and an investigation started. Terror Group was worried about that and hired PMCs called USEC, and those were supposed to stop those investigations. And the USEC are basically United Security or something from the NATO. Terror Group was accused of experimentation with people as well. The Bear Group was made by Russia to counteract the USECs to reveal Terror Group's illegal affairs. The rest is just a clash of those two PMC groups. Scavs are apparently just former PMCs being stuck and living in Tarkov. So we can definitely see some similarities in both games. The story, both games have three groups: the USEC, which are the ghosts in Tabor, the Bear, which are the Folk in Tabor, and the Scavs, which are the Phoenix in Tabor. Also, both attacks are because of some accusations about human experimentation and just generally between Russia and NATO. Now to the cost and accessibility of both games. Tarkov is cheaper than Tabor, and also more people have a PC than a VR headset, so Tarkov is definitely cheaper than Tabor and more accessible. Tarkov does have really expensive editions though, while Tabor also has similar editions but for much cheaper. Now to the feedback and reviews of both games. Tabor is celebrating their VR Game of the Year award and have a great community that looks forward to the future of the game, while Tarkov is kind of past its hype but still goes strong. They did take a bunch of bad decisions though, so it's definitely declining. Thank you for watching this video. I spent my whole night making this and I'm very tired, so it means a lot to me that you made it this far. It's actually 11 PM when I stopped this audio recording, and you can only guess how long this video editing will take me. I'll be awake at like 3 AM finishing this. Like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe if you did even more. Check out my Patreon if you want to really support me. Also, the Into the Radius giveaway is still happening. 1 quest key and 1 Pico key, and also 1 Steam key if the previous winner doesn't respond. So if you're interested in the game, drop a comment and tell me what platform you want, and I'll see you in the next video.